Hello, everyone. I would like to invite you to the Preservation Cafe. I'm Angie Schmidt, and this is Libby Quaid, and we're from the Capitol Hill Restoration Society. CHRS is an all-volunteer organization founded 70 years ago to help preserve, protect, and our historic district through education and appreciation. Part of our mission to educate, we hold these preservation cafes on a variety of topics, generally related to older homes. And so tonight we've invited the L'Enfant Trust. We have Lauren McHale and Katie Williams joining us. And the L'Enfant Trust is a nonprofit dedicated to historic preservation in DC, right up our alley. You often see their badges on the houses around the historic district and on the Hill, but also outside the historic district and throughout the city. We will start with the presentation first, and then we will have a Q&A session. You can either do it through the chat, you can raise your hands, or you can do both. I will unmute everybody after the presentation. So if you'd like to start, Lauren or Katie, please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Libby and Angie, very much, and for everyone at the Capitol Hill Restoration Society. We're thrilled to be here tonight and to share our work with you all. And I think Katie is pulling up the presentation right now. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So I'm the president of the L'Enfant Trust. I've been in this role for about 7 or 8 years now. And prior to that, I was director of preservation. And Katie is our operations and communications manager, and you'll hear from her a little bit later. We were founded in 1978, so we're not as old as Capitol Hill Restoration Society, but we do have a few years on us, to preserve and protect DC's historic neighborhoods and streetscapes. When we were founded, the preservation law here in DC was still very new. There were very few historic districts, but we, in the 60s and early 70s, definitely seen a lot of demolition in the city of historic buildings. And so this was a way that our founder, being an attorney and having expertise in the tax code and that sort of thing, knew that this tool existed and thought it would be a great way for people to preserve their own properties if they were so interested in doing. So that's how we got started. Since that time, we've had a very robust easement program, and almost 15 years ago, we started our historic properties redevelopment program, which is essentially a revolving fund for historic properties. So we acquire abandoned historic properties. Right now, we've concentrated on the historic Anacostia neighborhood. We rehab those properties for affordable home ownership opportunities. So, and Katie will talk a little bit about that later. Currently, we have 1,155 easements around the city. That's a big number. It seems a little overwhelming, but it's pretty manageable because we only accept easements in the District of Columbia. We can get to all of our properties pretty easily. So we do an annual inspection every year and work closely with homeowners. And so we cover a great deal of the city in all quadrants and all neighborhoods. So it's a very fun kind of cross section of DC and its history. And then staff is pretty small. It's myself, Katie, and we have a seasonal photographer, a couple of outside consultants that we use, but it's a small but mighty office. Katie, can you advance the next slide? Thanks. So this is just a selection of the buildings that we hold easements on. You'll see down there in the left-hand corner, Grace Church, that is now condominiums. That's in, yeah, I think that's Grace Church. Am I getting that name right? That's along Pennsylvania Ave in Capitol Hill. Yeah, so we've had an easement on that for a number of years. And then you can just see that, there's, kind of larger commercial buildings on Connecticut Ave, on 16th Street, Logan Circle, and then very small, modest row homes and commercial buildings as well. So it really kind of runs the gamut. Next slide. So a lot of people ask me why easements? If you're in the historic district, if you're on the National Register or whatever, why would you put an easement on your property? Well, there's a few reasons. One, like I said, when we were founded, it's an individual act to ensure preservation. So you can place an easement on a property that's not in historic district or on the National Register. If it meets certain qualifications, you can still place an easement on it. So it really is the strongest tool that a preservationist has to protect a property because it does run in perpetuity. So unlike um, some protections that might be associated with a grant program that helped for the rehab, that may run out in a certain amount of years. Or maybe you're a historic district right now, but down the road, um, there are people in office or in the community that don't feel like that's, what they want to see in their community anymore. And so historic districts designations can be subject to political whim, where an easement cannot. It's a privately held right. And then also it provides, if you do qualify for a federal income tax deduction on your easement donation, it's a great financial incentive to preserve for individuals to preserve their property. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, or more about that. Right, but before we go to the next slide, this is a picture of 918 F Street Northwest. This is the Pennsylvania Avenue National Historic District. As you can see, 918F is that brownstone building there in the middle that's intact. The historic buildings that were adjacent to that building were reduced to just facades. And you can see they're reinforced there with some steel scaffolding. And now that's, it's a very vibrant part of F Street now. But that was a historic district when that happened. And so that just shows that just because you're in a district doesn't mean that everything is protected all of the time. So, all right, Katie, thank you. So, a conservation easement is essentially a legal agreement between a property owner and a qualified preservation organization. Oh, thanks. Like the L'Enfant Trust, or it might be a historical society, it might be a local government agency, you know, if there's a number of different entities that are considered qualified preservation organizations. The National Trust for Historic Preservation also holds easements, and they have a number in Washington, D.C. So there's, different ways of going about that. The deed is, you can see the first page here on our slide. It's about a 6 or 7 page document that is signed both by the property owner and the easement holding organization, and it's recorded with the land records. And that's how it goes from one owner to the next. It runs with the land, it does not change. And once there is an easement on the property, you cannot reverse it. Um, and essentially, it says there can be no change in the building's exterior or surrounding open space without the written permission of the easement holding organization. There are some interior easements. We don't hold any, but I know the National Trust holds some. The DC government has some. But we don't at this time. It may be something that we do in the future, but we don't have any interior easements right now. But we do protect the exterior of all of our buildings. And I think a lot of people, think of the term facade easement and they think, oh, that's just the front or the view from across the street. Um, that's kind of an old-fashioned term that some of very early easements did just protect what you could see from the front of the property. But that, you know, a few of those happened early on, and then preservationists kind of came to the realization that that's kind of risky because somebody could demolish the building, keep the facade, and still not be in violation of the easement. So that was quickly reversed, and so we do protect the entire building and the open space. So even if you're making changes to a fence in your backyard or building an ADU, or making hardscaping changes. All of those changes are reviewed and approved by the L'Enfant Trust if you have an easement with our organization. So sometimes, people think it's just the building or what's touching the building, but it actually encompasses a lot more than that. And the donee of the easement has the obligation to keep the building in good repair and clean. So changes come to us, but they also have the obligation to keep the building in good repair and maintained well. Okay, next slide. So I said, that you can have an easement on your property without seeking a tax deduction, and that's a pretty straightforward process. But most people are, if they're going to go through with something like this, are interested in at least exploring the idea of getting a tax deduction. And so there's certain qualifications that you must meet to get that one-time federal income tax deduction. The building must be a contributing building in a registered historic district. So that can be, most of the historic districts in DC are national registered districts and local districts. So that's, pretty straightforward. But you can also be individually listed on the National Register. We actually just we're working with a property owner right now in Northwest that that is on the National Register of Historic Places. They're not in a district, a local or national district, but they are individually listed and they're interested in putting an easement on their property. So we do see a few of those come along. Like I said earlier, you have to have a qualified easement holder, so you can't donate your easement to, an organization that's unfamiliar with history and preservation and has that mission. So you have to have a qualified easement holder. It has to be given in perpetuity. So it can't be a term easement like it runs out in 50 years or something like that. You must have visual public access. So the public might not be able to see the whole building, but a good portion of it has to be visible. And part of this is so that the public can enjoy and learn from these buildings that are being preserved. Has to protect the entire exterior of the property. You also, if your property has a mortgage, you have to have subordination from the mortgage holder. And essentially, that is just saying if for some reason the property was foreclosed or taken by eminent domain, that if that would happen, the easement holder gets a portion of the proceeds that's equal to the value of the easement at the time of the donation. And we get that before the bank gets their money. So sometimes they can be a little shy about signing on to that. But we've been around since 1978. That's never happened. And I don't think I think it would be a very rare circumstance where that does. But it gives us a little assurance that if we were to lose this property, that we've spent a great deal of time making sure is preserved and in use, that if we were to lose it, we could have a portion of those proceeds to then continue our work with other historic properties. And again, it's a one-time federal income tax deduction that is, it's just, one owner, one time. Next slide, Katie. So when you donate an easement, you have to have an appraisal. And the appraiser will come up with two values. One is the fair market value of the property, just as it is. And then one is the appraised fair market value with the easement in place. And the difference between those two numbers is the actual value of the easement or what the tax deduction would be equal to. So this is probably a pretty modest example here for our city, but if you had a property appraised for $650,000, if the appraiser looked at comparables, looked at the restrictions that are already in place in the neighborhood, if you're in a local district, if there are, the zoning implications, and what restrictions are listed in the easement deed, they will come up with a number. And so in this case, the appraiser says, okay, this property with an easement is 600,000. Without an easement, it's 650. So the value of the tax deduction or the easement value is $50,000. Katie, next slide.
Yeah.
All
All right. Well,
right,
I
and
can
and I'm done. Katie's next.
yeah, I can go through the step-by-step process to donating an easement. As Lauren mentioned, if you are seeking the tax benefit or the tax deduction, the first step is determining that eligibility. So making sure the property is within a registered historic district greater than 50 years old, or listed individually on the National Register. We then also ask donors to complete the Part 1 certification, and this form evaluates the significance of the historic property and certifies that historic property for getting that tax deduction. So typically you'll fill out the Part 1 certification. It then goes to DC's Historic Preservation Office for review, and then they pass it along to the Park Service for signature. You'll also need subordination. I know Lauren mentioned this in the previous slide, but if you do have a mortgage on your property, your lender will need to subordinate to the easement, and that subordination form is in our standard deed. So we're always happy to share that with donors interested in donating an easement. You'll also need to complete an appraisal report, and hiring an appraiser to complete that appraisal report, which establishes the value of the easement as well as that fair market value, as Lauren mentioned in the previous slide. Another form as for completing the donation process is our standard deed, which we ask donors to sign. That will be notarized, and then also including the full legal description. And then once the donation form comes on our end, we'll review on the trust end and sign and notarize on our side. We also ask donors to submit digital photographs of the entire exterior of the property. So not just the front, but the sides, rear of the property, surrounding open space, as well as a map showing the location of the property. We also have a couple of standard forms that donors will sign, including an application form and statement of understanding. And then we also ask donors to submit and complete a fair share contribution. So that's 1% of the appraised fair market value of the property. And this fair share contribution is really a gift to the trust to help us continue the easement program as we're protecting that property in perpetuity. So it really just supports the trust's operations and just continuation of the easement program moving forward. And our website offers a helpful step-by-step guide for completing the donation. And you can see an arrow here on the slide to the step-by-step process. We always encourage people to check out that form because it's very helpful in kind of working through each step. If you're not interested in completing the donation process on your own, we do have a list of easement processors who can assist you with compiling all the necessary forms and documentation. So that's another option for donors interested as well. So in terms of working with easement with property owners, we consider ourselves a resource for historic property owners, easemented property owners. So you're always welcome to come to us with questions. And we also, as part of our easement program, we regulate the historic protected properties. So any proposed changes to the exterior facade, including the front, back, sides, rear, and roof, we do review all of those changes as well as the surrounding open space. So changes to hardscaping, fences, proposed garages, sheds, and decks. So we do need to review all of those requested changes, as well as exterior details. So paint color, as well as light fixtures, utility meters, shutters, signage, etc. We also do not allow for the painting of unpainted masonry. So that's something to keep in mind too. And then this photo on this slide just shows an example of our request for change form. So easemented property owners will go to our website and fill that out and submit that form. And then we also do need to issue an approval letter for all requests that come in. Hold on just one second. Okay. Yes, we do need to submit a formal letter of approval for all alterations. And this letter of approval, HPO also needs to see if you're submitting a building permit. And so the owner will receive the formal letter of approval once we review those changes. In terms of technical assistance and enforcement, we do an annual photography inspection at the beginning of the year. So this photography inspection is in January and February. Usually this is when there's less foliage, so it's easy to see the property at that time of year. And then once the annual photography inspection is complete, we bring those photos back into the office and we compare those photos against our controlling photos of the property to just ensure that there are no changes that we didn't approve. And then we also review building permits. There's a building permit list issued periodically by the DC government, and we review that building permit list just to make sure that all changes we approved for properties that received a building permit. Another helpful monitoring tool that we utilize is the bronze plaque that you'll see on our properties across DC's historic neighborhoods. And this bronze plaque is a really helpful monitoring tool for, let's say, an architect who's working on a property, and they'll see one of our bronze plaques and they'll know, okay, this is an easemented property. We have to make sure the trust reviews those proposed changes to that property. We also regularly communicate with owners through communication touch points, including our e-newsletter, social media. We put out an annual postcard, just kind of reminding property owners of their responsibilities as an easemented owner. So coming to us for changes to the exterior and such like that. If someone is looking to sell a property and they want to make sure their easemented property and they want to make sure that there are no existing violations on that easemented property, we issue an estoppel certificate just confirming that the easement is clean and the property is in good standing with the trust. So we do have a full professional staff to assist homeowners with that technical assistance. We help with routine property maintenance issues and can just be kind of a local resource for homeowners. Okay, so moving into our historic properties redevelopment program in historic Anacostia. So we do put easements on our historic property redevelopment program projects. So as Lauren mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, in 2013, the trust started its historic properties redevelopment program where we acquire and rehabilitate properties into affordable home ownership opportunities. So here you can see an example of one of our properties in historic Anacostia, 1326 Valley Place, that was rehabilitated and then sold in 2021. And you can see the easement plaque that was installed here. And since 2013, we've completed 5 historic property rehabilitations, and we're currently working on our 6th project. And here are a couple of photos of 1220 Mapleview Place Southeast. This is our current rehabilitation project. This is a 1902 Queen Anne style property. And we're currently in the last stages of building permit review. So we're getting close to the finish line there for construction. You can see kind of recent photos of 1220 Mapleview Place, which we often called Big Green. That's sort of the community's name for the project. And then here on this last slide, you can see a historic photo of Big Green from around 1975. And this photo shows the original wraparound front porch as well as the rear porch. And as part of the trust rehab, we will be rebuilding the front porch. During construction a few years ago, the original porch columns were discovered in the property. So we're excited to be able to reuse those for the porch's reconstruction. All right, so I think that's it on my end. Unless Lauren, you had anything to add?
No, I think that was great. We'd love to answer questions, and wanted to make sure we allowed for plenty of time to do that. So
Sorry, I'm trying to find the way to get the questions. You can take your, how do I do this?
So, screen sharing. Oh, here's a question from Anna.
Okay.
Oh.
How do you decide on a rehabilitation project?
Great question. So with our program, our historic properties redevelopment program, we wanted to, instead of doing a property, one in Northwest, one in Northeast, just kind of spotted all around the city, we thought it made sense to concentrate in one neighborhood. And we did really a survey of the city and did a lot of analysis and decided that Anacostia was well, one of the first historic districts in DC. There's incredible historic buildings there and history that oftentimes is overlooked. And there's a lot of buildings in need there. So it made sense for us to concentrate our program there. And we really worked with the community in identifying the buildings in need. Some of them are quite obvious, just driving around. But we really worked with the community to kind of lead us to these projects because there were a number of historic buildings in the historic district owned by the DC government that had been boarded up and vacant for a number of years. And so while we were kind of trying to work with the DC government, we acquired 2 properties on our own to kind of cut our teeth on being developers, which was a role we weren't accustomed to. And those ended up being very successful projects. They were long vacant properties, but we were able to contact the families and work with them on a sale. After those properties were done, we really started to aggressively work with the city on a plan for their buildings. Four of them in historic Anacostia were in really bad shape and the neighborhood was pretty frustrated. So we worked with DC Council, we worked with the mayor's office, we worked with Department of Housing and Community Development to finally come up with a plan to have 4 buildings transferred to our program for rehab and resale as affordable housing. And so the pictures that Katie just showed you of our big green project, that's the last of the 4 that were transferred to us. So yeah, it was really we kind of zoned in on Anacostia, but then we let people in the neighborhood kind of take us to the projects that they thought were the most critical.
Thanks, Lauren.
Mhm.
The next question is, can you talk a little bit about the process if a homeowner needs to make changes to the exterior?
Sure. We encourage homeowners to call us, send us an email. We actually have a contact form on our website that was just updated, so we hope it's a little easier to use now, that you can just send us a quick message and tell us what it is that you're working on, what your project is, and then we can kind of start the conversation about what information we might need to review a project. And we do on our website have a request for change form that's just kind of a generic form, but it gives very good information about, if it's a small project and, if it's a larger project, we'll probably need to see architectural plans and material specifications and that sort of thing. So there is quite a bit of information on our website, but really the easiest thing to do is just give us a call. We actually answer the phone. We show up to the office and we answer our phone. And if we don't, leave us a message and we'll get back to you very shortly. But that's really the easiest way to do it. And then we can just kind of informally talk about what you're thinking about doing, and then tell you what we'll need to see to review the project.
I would just like to vouch for you and for your organization being good about that. I've done two things, a major repaint of the outside of my house, and also an addition of a security back door with very smooth sailing. You guys were just helpful. And sometimes it was actually nice to kind of narrow down my options because sometimes there's too many.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. It wasn't hard. It wasn't mean. It wasn't
Oh,
anything. It was
oh,
lovely.
oh,
Thank you.
good. Thank you.
Don't be
Mm,
afraid of them. They're
yep.
wonderful.
Please don't.
Yeah, please reach out.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I have a side question about that
Mhm.
though too. You say you look at the permits for the buildings that are under easement. Is that just for exterior changes, or is that for all building permits on ones that have the easement?
It's for so they send the DC sends us a list of or the DC Historic Preservation Office sends us a list of the permits that they have signed off on, and so that's mostly exterior projects, and then we compare that list with our list of easements and just kind of pull out the ones that are relevant to us. And most of the time it's a project we've already approved and there's a letter of approval on file, and there's nothing to be done. But every once in a while there'll be a permit for something that we didn't know about, and it doesn't mean that that project has already been done and completed. It just means we don't know about it. So we might reach out to the building owner and say, hey, we saw this, what's going on? And they might say, oh yeah, we went ahead and got a building permit, but we're still thinking about whether or not we actually want to do it, or we're waiting on the contractor or something like that. And then but then sometimes there's confusion, and it can be complex when you have a DC Historic Preservation Office, you have an easement holder, you have Capitol Hill Restoration Society that may be reviewing and commenting on things. And so sometimes, especially for someone new to the district or Capitol Hill, they might be kind of confused about, well, where do I go first, and all these different layers and stuff like that. So things like that happen, but it's a good way to kind of keep up on what's going on, and hopefully get to the property owner before anything significant happens that we're not aware of. So
Thank you. I have a
sure.
question too. So
Sure.
my house is in one block outside of the historic district. So I don't have an easement, although somebody on that block does have a L'Enfant trust easement, which is interesting. But
Yeah.
let's say I have questions that the HRS or the HPO hasn't been able to answer about, I don't know, something technical about preserving or restoring or the history of my house, and I call it
Mhm.
this. So what can you do for people like me?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we're always happy to talk to anyone who's just interested in preservation and historic preservation and that sort of thing. So if we can be helpful, it doesn't matter if you have an easement on your property or not. We love just being a community resource and try to, if we don't know the answer, we'll try to send you to the appropriate person. If I hate to say we would have any advice that's better than Historic Preservation Office or CHRS, but because there's a lot of smart people and a lot of people that have experience in preservation in the city. So we will do our best. But yeah, if there's some information we can provide, or maybe there's a contact in a different city, or an architect or an architectural historian or someone we know we can put you in contact with, we're happy to do that.
I had another question actually kind of related to that. So if you are outside the historic district, but your house is more than 50 years old, it can be considered? Is that what I understood, or no?
No, so you have to well for if you're interested in the tax deduction, if you're interested in
Okay.
the incentive, it has to be either individually listed on the National Register or in a National Register district. If you're not interested in the tax deduction, you just want to know that your property is going to be protected, then you can come to us. And if it's in our opinion a qualifying building, it's historic, it has integrity, it's something that we feel would contribute to our portfolio, we are happy to work with you on that.
It's
So
good news
so we
actually for people who aren't who are right outside the historic district if they'd like to be protected as well.
exactly. Mhm.
Cool.
Yep. So,
Do we have any other
um,
questions besides me? And then the other question I had is what would you say your percentages of residential as opposed to commercial buildings are with easements?
oh, I wish I had that exact number because I could look that up. It's a majority residential properties. I mean, we do have a number of commercial buildings, but I mean, Katie, do you have an idea? I mean, I would say, I mean, 75% of our portfolio is probably residential. Do you agree? Oh, did we lose her?
No,
I don't know.
okay.
But yeah, it's
Yeah,
around that. So
I think that
yeah.
sounds right. That's all.
Yeah, definitely heavy residential. And actually the last few years that we've received donations, it's all been residential. So less interest from the commercial building side in recent years. So that's kind of interesting. I haven't really thought about that, why that's the case, but definitely heavy on the residential.
And then my other question also is which ward do you think has the most of your easements?
Ooh. Um,
Where are they? Are they part of the city or are they kind of spread all over?
There, we have easements in all four quadrants. We do not hold any easements in Ward 7. That is one ward that we don't have any in, which we'd like to change that. But I think probably Ward 2 is very heavy with conservation easements because that's kind of where things got started, and then it's kind of expanded from there. So um, I would say probably Ward 2 has the majority. But I mean, we have, as far as historic districts go, Georgetown and Capitol Hill are the two neighborhoods where we hold the most easements, for sure.
We have another question. Are you able to give examples of your easement properties in Capitol Hill? I guess maybe things that are recognizable people generally.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Oof, trying to think of, I mean, we have so many.
I know you'll find a lot of them along East Capitol, some of the more broad, grand avenues, Massachusetts, Maryland.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people are familiar in Capitol Hill with the restaurant Pascal,
Yeah.
that's actually one of our easemented properties, and I believe that's on Maryland Ave.
It's
Yeah.
Ninth of
Nice.
Maryland. It's right down the street from my house.
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
Thank you, Katie. I'm just like, all of a sudden I can't think of any addresses.
Did it also have
But
an easement when it used to be Kenny's Smokehouse?
it
Or is that
did.
new?
Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
No, it did. Yes. Yep. Yeah, we've held an easement there for a number of years. So yeah, we've seen lots of different things, through that building. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a one that would really kind of stick out in everyone's mind. But I mean, you'll see our plaque around, and on lots of different streets, but mostly residential. I can't really think of any except for Pasquale. I'm having a hard time thinking of any commercial buildings that we hold easements on in Capitol Hill, so it's mostly residential. But you'll once you recognize the plaque, you'll start seeing them everywhere.
So, when it when it comes to assistance that homeowners call and ask for, what would you say are the top couple of most common things? Would it be like windows and doors? Because I know windows are very tricky if you're in a historic building.
Yes, windows and doors absolutely are something that we, on a weekly basis, we're talking with property owners about those topics. If original windows exist, we always encourage restoration if that's possible. And we encourage storm windows, either interior or exterior. Technology there has changed a lot too. So, kind of the clunky exterior storms that we kind of grew up looking at. That's not really what's on the market these days. So there's a lot of good things there. But you know, I think Katie and I spend a lot of time reviewing additions to historic buildings because, you know, as we know that these row houses are narrow, they're small, you know, and families are wanting to stay in DC and, you know, raise their families here. And so we've got to be flexible in making sure people can stay in their homes, and have the room, for their families that they need. So we spend a lot of time doing that. And we also review a lot of solar panel proposals. You know, that's, you know, I have to say, when I first started the trust, I was very scared of that. I was like, oh my, you know, it was just kind of like, oh, no, 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 I can't possibly think about that, you know, but I've learned a lot about it. Um, you know, with all of the row houses and flat roofs we have in DC, that really lends themselves very nicely to solar panels. So, I mean, we review solar panel installations, you know, very frequently. And a lot of our buildings, it's kind of an easy thing, you know, to approve. You know, we do have questions. We want to see the plans. We want to know, you know, where the equipment and the conduit lines are going to run, and what if there'll be any visibility from the street. And you know, usually if there is a little something we're concerned about, some modification can be made, and you know, you can still have your solar panels and make the preservationists happy at the same time. So
Are pop-up allowed on easemented properties?
we've had a few, and you know, you know, depending on kind of the property and the lot and how it's situated and that sort of thing, you know, if the pop-up is set back enough, you know, that's usually something that we can work with. You know, but every property is a little different. So, you know, there may be some properties that just they aren't oriented the right way to kind of accommodate that, but there are a lot that do, and we certainly have a few in our portfolio. So yeah, it's worth the conversation, you know, if you're interested in doing something like that.
Wanted to ask that.
Katie, can you think of anything else?
I don't think so. I think you covered it. Yeah.
If one was to do a lawn front easement, and got approval and everything else, who puts the badges on? Do you have a badge guy, or do the owner, do they have to get someone to do it?
We do have a badge guy. We for a number, well, we worked with a man for a number of years to install our plaques, and then he retired. But for the last, I don't know, probably 10 years, we've used Edgar's Masonry. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They do a lot of work on the Hill, and they've been installing our plaques, and we love that because they're very careful in their installation process, and that, you know, they know not to harm masonry and to drill in the joints, or, you know, be very careful about how the plaque is applied to the building. So you know, they're pretty meticulous with that sort of thing. So we feel good about them taking on that responsibility. So that's who we use. But donors, you know, if they have a contractor that they want to use, or they want to install it themselves, that's perfectly fine. It's, you know, the plaque is mandatory, but you don't have to. You can install it yourself if that's what you wish to do. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Thank you so much. This is very
Sure.
informative. I think it might be of interest to many people on the Hill, and also about, if you have one, if you didn't really investigate what exactly that means. Because sometimes you're just at closing and all of a sudden you've got this lawn fund thing. It was kind of a surprise to us. I mean, we didn't care necessarily, but it's, you know, it's one of
Right.
those things that just comes along with the houses sometimes. So it's good to know
Right.
exactly what you're getting into, but also the options is that the program's still running, which is great.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it's also nice for us to know we have more resources of places to ask good questions about older housing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Angie, when we spoke earlier, you asked about Preservation Trust and some properties that have two
Yeah.
plaques. And so I just say a little bit on that. Preservation Trust was an organization that existed for a number of years. Ruth Ann Overbeck was the founder of that organization. And when it closed its doors, I don't know, close to 20 years ago, they asked if we would take over their easement properties. And so we agreed to that. And so in that case, you might see a property that has two plaques, one that says PT and then one that says L'Enfant. Doesn't mean there's two easements, it's just one. But we're now the holder of those easements. And and then there's some people that decided to take the Preservation Trust plaque off and just use ours. It was up to the property owner. So you'll see some different combinations there. But yeah, there's not two easements. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
excellent.
Great.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Oh, what?
I think we may have gotten one more
Oh, one more
question.
question. Sorry.
How do I? 1 second for us to get to the question. There we go.
Oh, I see. Oh. Mm.
That was a
Okay.
thank you.
Excellent. It was just a
Okay.
thank you.
Oh, okay, great.
So anyway, thank you
Great.
very much. We really appreciate it. If anyone wants to see anything about this presentation online after the fact, it will be located. I don't know if you will have it on your website, but it will certainly be on the CHRS website. So if you have any questions, and of course, you can always reach out to L'Enfant anytime. They will answer the phone, I can guarantee. So anyway, thank you very much. We
Great.
really appreciate your time.
Thank you both so much.
All right.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.